Hi, I'm the Prodigal Fish, and today we're going to talk about the Charlie Brown incident. Imagine being a fighter pilot during the Second World War. You serve a brutal authoritarian regime with very little regard for human life. And as this war drags on, desperation sets in, and now there's no rule that is safe. You complete your attack run on an enemy squadron and score several kills, and out of the corner of your eye, you spot a heavily damaged enemy bomber, like limping away from the rest of the group and trying to get home. Your targeting sights hover over and you ready for the kill. And at that moment, you're faced with a choice: shoot it down and rack up another kill, or spare their lives and face judgment from your superiors. That's exactly what happened on December 20th, 1943. Our story begins with a German fighter pilot named Franz Stiegler. He was born August 21st, 1915, in Regensburg, Germany. Franz's father served as a pilot during the First World War, and he followed his footsteps by joining the Luftwaffe, or the German Air Force, in 1939. He flew both the Bf-109 and the Me-262, which was the world's first jet fighter. During his career, he became an ace, with over 27 confirmed aerial victories. This guy was by no means a coward. The second important person in this tale is Second Lieutenant Charlie Brown, a B-17 pilot with the United States Army Air Force 379th Bombardment Group. He was a farm boy from Weston, West Virginia. On the day of the story, Charlie's aircraft, the Ye Old Pub, was part of a massive flight group with a mission to destroy an FW-190 factory. The Ye Old Pub was crewed by 10 men, 4 officers and 6 sergeants. Brown's B-17 began his 10-minute bomb run at 8,320 meters, or 27,300 feet, and it was on over negative 76 Fahrenheit outside. Before the bomber released its payload, there was accurate flak that shattered the nose's plexiglass, knocked out the second engine, and damaged the fourth engine. And it was kind of hard to tell how bad it was going to, so they had to slow. They had to really move in kind of slow. The damage slowed the bomber, but Brown was unable to remain with his formation, and he fell back as a straggler, which is pretty bad because that means they were vulnerable to enemy attack. Brown's struggling B-17 was now attacked by over a dozen enemy fighters, a combination of Bf-109s and FW-190s of JD-11 for more than 10 minutes. Further damage was sustained, including the number 3 engine, reducing it to only half power, which means the airplane only operated about 40% of its total rated power. The bomber's internal oxygen, hydraulic, and electrical systems were also damaged, and it lost half of its rudder and elevator, and part of its nose cone, which means it couldn't even move very fast or very well. Several of the gunner's weapons jammed, and it was because the onboard defrosting mechanisms froze, and their gun just wouldn't fire anymore. This left the bomber with only 2 dorsal guns and one of the 3 forward-facing nose guns from the 11 available. Most of the crew was wounded, and the tail gunner, Eckenrode, had been decapitated from a direct hit from a cannon shell, while the tail gunner, Yelisanko, was critically wounded in the leg by shrapnel. One man named Blackford, his feet were frozen because of shorted out heating wires in his uniform. And one of them had been hit in the eye by a cannon shell. And Brown himself was wounded in his right shoulder. The morphine syrups that were carried in the first aid kits were frozen and it couldn't be used. And the bomber's radio was also damaged, so they couldn't communicate. And through all the sustained attack, they only lost one man. They discussed possibly jumping out, but then they realized that one of their comrade, Yelisenko, would not be able to land safely. So they stayed with him and they just flew on, chose to go home. Brown's damaged and straggling bomber was spotted on the ground by the Germans, who also happened to be Franz Stiegler. He was on the ground refueling, rearming for another pass. The moment he saw it, he took off in his Bf-109, even though there was a 50 caliber bullet embedded in the radiator, which could have caused the engine to explode. He caught up on the plane quick, and something just didn't feel right. He looks inside, and he can see these giant holes inside of it. And this plane was just riddled with flak and machine gun fire. So he gets a little closer, and he's able to see the injured and incapacitated crew. And to the American pilot's surprise, the German didn't fire at them. Stiegler instead recalled the words of one of his commanding officers during his time in North Africa: "If I ever see or hear of you shooting a man in a parachute, I will kill you myself." Stiegler later commented, "It was like they were in a parachute. I saw them and I couldn't shoot them down." So Flans flies right next to the pilot side. He makes eye contact with both the pilots. And both these guys are freaking out because they're literally at this guy's mercy. Stiegler tries 2 times to get them to land. First at a German airfield, and then into neutral Sweden, just because he wanted to get the guy's medical attention. The Americans say they couldn't understand him and they continued on. The next part's crazy. France positions himself next to and under the B-17, so German anti-aircraft guns won't target it. He escorts them all the way back to the English Channel, and he puts himself at risk from the British air picket defending it. Halfway through, the B-17 bomber shakes its guns to let France know that, hey, you gotta leave. France salutes and returns home. Only one man died that day, and when Franz returned home, he kept it a secret because he didn't want to be punished for his superiors. Eventually, Franz becomes a jet pilot until the end of the war. After that, he moves to Canada in 1953 and becomes a successful businessman. In 1986, a now retired Lieutenant Colonel Brown was asked to speak at a combat pilot reunion called the Gathering of the Eagles at an Air Command and Staff College at Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. Someone asked him if he had any memorable moments during World War II, and he thought about it for a minute and recalled the story of Stigler's escort and salute. Afterwards, he decided that he should try to find this pilot. It took 4 years and a letter to the International Pilots Association, and a few months later, he received a letter from Stigler, who is now living in Canada. And pretty much the letter said, "I was the one."
Franz, what were your feelings when you met again for the first time?
I was so happy as we met that I clapped him and hugged him. It wasn't easy.
The fact that he risked his life really in many ways, and I wrote him in a letter. I said, if you made a habit of feeling sorry for bomber crews, flag up alongside them, I am sure that you were shot down many times. But it was not only the audacity that he came up to us and then recognizing the threat. If someone had seen him and reported him, it could have been a death sentence.
When they spoke on the phone, Stigler described his plane, the escort and salute, which confirmed everything Brown needed to hear to know that he was a German pilot involved in the incident. What's pretty cool is they didn't actually live that far from one another, and they were best friends from 1990 to 2008, and they even died a few months apart. I chose this story because it shows the great courage and personal risk that Franz took to spare an enemy. This shows the great compassion that humans can have even during wartime. Who knows how many stories like this have gone unsaid, and I wanted to take the time to share it with you. And I ask that you take a few moments to honor these men and everyone else who came before us, who was faced with incredible choices, and even when surrounded by death, still chose to be human beings. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for joining me. This is the Prodigal Fish, signing off. Bye.